Midsommar came out last year and was directed by Ari Aster. This was a film I was very excited to see when it first came out. On paper, it's got a lot of ingredients for films that I really enjoy and that I really get into. The director's previous film was Hereditary. They came out in 2018, and that was a film I really liked. It was a horror film slash psychological drama, and it was really effective. It chilled me to the bone, actually, which is not something that I can say about a lot of films. Certainly not many in the last 10 or 20 years. So I was excited to see what he did with this. It was a concept I was quite interested in. I've liked other films that centre around cults and the supernatural and things like that. You know, films like The Wicker Man, the original 1970s version. And the film was billed as a more slow paced film, and that's the sort of films that I really like. Not exclusively, but I really do have a lot of time for films that commit a lot of energy to just creating an experience within the 90 minute or 2 hour runtime, whatever it is, using cinematography, using the tricks of filmmaking. They really create a world that feels alive and that feels real and that you can just be immersed in. And then those kind of films tend not to be too heavy on things like plot or characters, but that's not the main focus of the film. And that is what Midsummer is, and I do like films like that. So I was excited to see what this film would be like. Um, and yeah, I've rewatched the film in preparation for this review. I saw it at the cinema last year, and I'm afraid on both occasions the film just didn't really work for me, sadly. And it's a shame because I really wanted to like this film, and I thought maybe upon rewatching it, I would see some things that I didn't see the first time, and that it would grow on me. But I'm afraid, yeah, it just didn't really work. Now that's not to say it's complete rubbish. I'll talk first about some of the things I did like in the film. The cinematography, of course, is what you would expect. It's really excellent. Um, it's set obviously it's set in Sweden. In the middle of summer when the sun never really sets. It's an experience that people, who live in the north of Scotland might also be able to share. Maybe not to the same extreme, but that cinematography of it just always being really quite really bright. It seems as though the sun comes from every direction in the film. I noticed there aren't really any shadows. I thought it was really effectively done. I like the cinematography. A lot of symmetry as well. I noticed just in the way that shots were set up. When they're all sitting together. I thought that was quite cool. And the production design of the pagan village, I thought was fine. I liked, the barn that they're all in with those paintings on the walls, and I mean, they obviously paid a lot of attention to detail with it, which I liked. Um, the characters and the story of the film I'll talk more about in a minute, but I will say that I thought the film got off to a very strong start. The opening 15 minutes or so, where they establish the lead character, the woman played by Florence Pugh. She is someone who's had this horrible tragedy befall her. Really, like, I've noticed this as a theme in Ari Aster's film. It happened in Hereditary. The main character seemed to suffer like just the worst things that could really happen to people is in real life. He really seems quite wedded to just the worst kind of human misery being on his films, and that's how this film started off. And I thought it got off to a very strong start in terms of setting up these characters. She's got a boyfriend with whom there's I guess a bit of a disconnect, and he's got his friends that are all wanting to go on this trip to Sweden. I thought all that was fine. I was hooked in the film when it first started. But the problems for me, I think, start as soon as they go to Sweden. Really, um, I know that I did say that I do like films that are more experience driven, but there needs to be something to the plot, and I think having an experience driven film just didn't really work in this kind of story. I didn't feel that there was any intrigue really in the plot. There was no I think this film would have worked much better if there was some kind of mystery. Say they go to this place in Sweden, and things seem slightly off, increasingly so. They don't really say they don't, nothing seems off at first, but just as things go on, they notice that there's things that don't add up and things are a bit more sinister. But I mean, if you've seen the trailer or if you know the premise of the film, you know that where they're going is a place where very bad things are going to happen. So there's no mystery, no intrigue. The plot doesn't really unravel as the film goes on. You don't sort of discover things with the characters. And I thought that was a bit of a shame. I was kind of looking for that in the film, and it didn't really have it. It really is a case. It really is the case that once they go to this festival in Sweden, bad things just start happening, and it doesn't even feel like one thing leads on to the next. It feels, apart from I guess the very end of the film, everything just feels quite randomly placed. Um, and the characters as well, although they got off to a strong start, as the film goes on, they didn't work for me. The lead actress, she emotes quite well, at least at the very start, but she's quite one note. I felt there wasn't really a lot of nuance. I thought to the way that the actress portrays the character, especially in the last half hour where she sort of pouts to show that she's sad, and it seemed quite it seemed quite basic. I didn't think any of the performances really had any depth to them. In my opinion, the boyfriend character as well. He's just really sort of aloof, really quite vapid. And actually, I can pinpoint when I watched the film for the first time, and it was true the second time. I can pinpoint exactly when I realised that the film isn't working for me, and it happens. You know, maybe about a third of the way into the film, the start of the second act, where they're in Sweden and they see there's a scene where the two old people commit suicide as part of it's like an ancient ritual that they had in Scandinavia, where people in their maybe 70s or older, when they were no longer useful to the tribe or to the group, they would kill themselves. And it's a really graphic scene, really bloody, really quite horrible, and I think all but one of the group of Americans really knew what was going to happen. And immediately after that scene, immediately after that really quite horrifying scene, none of our main characters really react like human beings towards it. Immediately after it, and this is what I'm talking about. The boyfriend character immediately goes to his friend. His friend's doing like his dissertation on the people in Sweden, on their customs and religion, and immediately the boyfriend says to him, "I want to do my dissertation on the same thing as you," which first of all is a pretty selfish thing to do. So why would we feel sympathy for this character? And then second of all, you've just seen this really horrific thing. Is this really the conversation you're going to have? And I think that's where I really realised that there is a serious disconnect between me as the audience and the characters in the film. They did not act like human beings, and I guess part of that is because throughout the film they're supposed to be addled with all manner of drugs and psychoactive substances that they're asked to ingest. But it doesn't mean anything. I mean, the disconnect is still there, whether they're on drugs or not. So that's when I realised it wasn't really working for me. Um, I guess watching the film, I was never curious to see what happens next. Everything just sort of unfolds, and there's no hook from scene to scene. Um, and I guess I should correct myself. The only two people that react normally to the sort of old people's suicide are the two. There's like a British couple who are there as well. They're not really developed, but out of our they react quite badly to it, and they immediately want to go. But none of our main characters do. They're all happy to stay, and they continue to like eat and drink things that are given to them by the by the Swedish people. Including things that are like clearly psychoactive substances, including things that are clearly like tainted with quite disgusting substances. If you've seen the film, you'll know what I'm talking about. Um, and it didn't do anything for me. I didn't really care when anything happened to these characters, and of course all the friends, the boyfriend's friends that are on the group are just complete idiots. One of them like gets drunk and starts urinating on the group's ancestral tree or something like that, and then one of the guy that's doing his dissertation, like sneaks into their church or whatever and starts taking pictures of their sacred texts. And the characters are all just so stupid. And I know that horror films aren't generally known for having strong characters. If you look at all your slasher films and stuff, characters are just disposable. But I really expected a bit more from this film, especially based on Hereditary, the director's previous film. I really expected it to be a bit more deep, a bit more nuanced, for the characters to have a bit of depth to them. And aside from, I guess, the lead actress, none of them have that. Um, so the film I didn't really connect with the film. And one thing, and this is something that probably only I will have experienced with the film. I mentioned The Wicker Man, the 1973 film, at the start of this review. One of the best horror films of all time, one of the best British films of all time. Um, I thought that this film would be more like that, like the 70s Wicker Man, which does have a lot of sort of intrigue and a lot of mystery, and it does just sort of build in terms of being creepy and scary, and the lead character is a solid protagonist in that film. Um, I thought Midsommar would remind me of the 70s Wicker Man. It reminded me of the Wicker Man, just the wrong Wicker Man. It reminded me of the one that came out in 2006 with Nicolas Cage, and it bears a lot of similarities with that film, so much so that I refuse to believe that it couldn't have been intentional. I don't believe that no one stood up in the production process and said, actually, this film seems very similar to the 2006 classic, which is the Nicolas Cage remake of The Wicker Man. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's widely regarded as one of the worst horror films of all time, possibly one of the worst films of all time, certainly one of the most unintentionally hilarious. But there's a number of things in Midsommar that remind me of that, which I thought was really strange. The cinematography of it, a lot of bright colours. There's a lot of like sort of blonde-haired women running around, just like the Wicker Man. There's scenes where like all the women are like, when one person's sort of in pain or upset, all of the women like start screaming and crying and wailing like in unison. And that happens in the 2006 Wicker Man, which I thought was quite strange because it made me think of it. And then obviously, if you've seen the film, the creme de la creme, so to speak, is the use of a bear costume at the end of the film. But believe it or not, someone did kind of spoil to me before I saw this film that a character gets burned alive inside of a bear. Now, I'd pictured that the bear gets cut open and someone gets put in there and burned, and that's like really sick and really disturbing. But it's a bear costume. The guy's head is sticking out the bear's face, just like Nicolas Cage's was in the hit comedy film The Wicker Man from 2006. And then, of course, he gets burned alive at the end, which again is The Wicker Man. So that's maybe something only I would experience because I remember that film vividly. But I just thought it was so strange that I was getting flashbacks to a really, blatantly terrible film from 15 years ago whilst watching, this film, which is really, I mean, Midsummer was placed on a pedestal, really. A lot of people liked it, a lot of critics liked it. I mean, I understand I'm in the minority with my views. And again, it's really a shame. I really wanted to like this, and who knows, I was going to say if I watch it again, I have no desire to watch this again. But if I see it again, maybe in like 10 years or something, it could be that I see something I haven't seen the previous two times, and I do warm to it. I don't rule it out, because sometimes it's natural for people to change their views on films over years. But at the moment, I can't in good conscience recommend this. It didn't work for me. I like films that can just exist as an experience, but this this was classic style over substance. There was no plot. There was no plot really worthy of mentioning. The characters were really shallow. The performances weren't great, and it just did nothing for me. So as a rating, I'm going to give Midsummer 46 out of 100. It's not awful. I like the cinematography. It starts really well. There's a solid foundation there. I just think they needed to do more with the plot. They needed to add some intrigue. Maybe don't reveal in all the trailers and stuff that it's going to be like a creepy cult. Maybe keep people guessing. Because that's what Ari Aster did with Hereditary. I mean, in Hereditary, I would say if I was rating, it would be in the late 70s, maybe even 80 or 81. It was a really solid film where you're constantly guessing and the plot takes so many twists and turns. And this was the director's second film, I do compare it to Hereditary, and yeah, it disappointed me, I'm afraid.